Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and golf industry guru listeners. It is James Cronk here, your host for another live gig, a Q&A call, live podcast. I am actually looking at the snow, which is rare for us in Vancouver, Canada. Certainly on Tuesday, March the 10th, but I'm sure it won't be here for long, and I'm sure others of you that might be across North America could have all kinds of different weather that's going on. But no matter what the weather is happening in your neck of the woods, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you there's probably one thing that is on many of your minds, because when I go to conferences and I talk to people about the challenges that they're facing in their businesses, one of the themes that comes up on a regular basis, man, is food and beverage, right? And so I had the pleasure of listening to our guest today give two sessions at the NGCOA Canada National Conference last year in Niagara Falls. And it was very important to me, after watching this gentleman explain his history, his philosophy, his thoughts, his best practices, his suggestions, that he would be a very valuable guest for our gig audience. So without further ado, from Butter Hospitality, please welcome Kevin Morrison. Kevin, welcome to the Gig Podcast, sir. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well, James. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Kevin, it was great to be in the audience and to listen to you give your sessions in Niagara Falls. But before we get started, I mean, please share. You told a great story about your history and your experiences, and I was a young 19-year-old manager in my first restaurant, and I don't know if we're similar ages, but you certainly get to see a lot of things and learn a lot of things over the years in food and beverage. And Kevin, what's your journey been about? And how did you, what have you been doing, and how did you get to where you are now?
How did I get to where I am now? That's great, because I'm an older guy like yourself. So got out of high school. The traditional route back then was go to college. My parents were like, you got to go to college. So I'm like, I'll try it. Went through a lot of different colleges, universities, and had a great time. They all had the same thing in common. They, Monday through Friday, bored me. The weekends, I loved it. So I was the type of guy, I didn't do well in a classroom. I didn't do well sitting still. I had to be learning, not learning necessarily, but I had to be working. I love to work. College and myself did not agree. So decided to leave after about a year. I stepped away, and I wanted to, we're talking 1983, 84. So told my parents I want to become a chef. At that time, the industry wasn't anything like it is today. So checked out a few different chef schools and ended up going to school in Illinois, Joliet Junior College. Last semester there, I felt I was ready to go on my own. So I left school and just hit downtown Chicago and just started working, and loved it. I never looked back. I mean, we're talking, I'm 61, so we're talking a long ass time ago, right?
Sure.
But I just loved it. I loved learning the hard way, and opened my first business when I was 29. It was a wholesale produce company, and that grew into a sandwich shop that a buddy of mine opened in Denver, Colorado, called Spicy Pickle. We opened 3 restaurants, got incredibly bored, and someone approached us about franchising. So we jumped into that field, not knowing what it was about. So that was quite a learning experience. Then we went public. Took that company public, not me, but our CEO. Wow. I was more of a pawn in the deal. He was like, sign here, do this, do that. I was like, yeah, cool. Learned the hard way what a public company was, because I got fired about 3 years later. I was pretty vocal about our direction. And after that, I said, F this, man. I'm not going down that road again. So opened my own restaurant in Denver with my wife at the time. And it was great timing. It was street tacos. Great timing. We blew that up to 4 locations. Then I opened a seafood restaurant called Fish and Beer, and very recently just sold. October, sold and left Denver, Colorado, moved to Calgary, Canada full time, and I moved to be close to my kids. And now I'm coaching, and I love it. I work with independent operators in Canada, in the US. Most of it's on Zoom. And, it's amazing what you learn in 40 plus years in this industry when you're not always paying attention. It just kind of soaks in.
Kevin, what do the people that are calling you that you're talking to on Zoom? What are some of the topics that you're coaching for them? Like, what are some of the things that someone's going to call up Butter Hospitality and ask Kevin for your opinion? What are some of the things they're asking you about?
Everybody has different pain points, but what I'm realizing is their pain points, once we start peeling back the layers and I start asking questions, and I'll say 90% of the time, the pain point is coming down the prime cost. So your COGS and labor, it's your biggest expense in any restaurant. I don't care if it's fast service, fast food, fast casual, full service, fine dining, or casual. Prime cost is your highest. And that's my niche. That's all I work on. Luckily, I'm a chef. So my background is I'm strong at menu engineering. I coach a little on DIY digital marketing stuff the average restaurant operator can do, and then labor efficiency. So that's my niche, and that's my focus.
So Kevin, the golf and club business obviously is a unique industry in so many ways. I mean,
Sure.
I love this. I remember talking to a private club in Canada, and they were losing, $700,000 a year in food and beverage on basically speaking about $4 million of revenue. And it was a concern, but
it's nice to be in that situation.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we're still having conversations around, food and beverage as an amenity to the golf, to the club. Yeah. Then you've got, let's say a daily fee course that's got a snack bar that's open. It's got open for breakfast for the golfers. It's going to be open almost 24/7 in the sense to service, the golf community and all that stuff, and then the local community. It's all so different, and well, there's no doubt one of the things I also would suggest is that a lot of us get into managing the golf business and we become responsible for a golf club that happens to have a multi-million-dollar food and beverage business attached to it, or even just a hundreds of thousands of dollars food and beverage business attached to it. And all of a sudden, we're dealing with all the things you're talking about, labor and cost of goods and inventory controls and all kinds of problems. And I guess my question, and we read this all the time about the longevity of food and beverage, but why does so many food and beverage operations, I guess, kind of rely on like gut instinct, I guess, instead of process or systems? I mean, do you find that is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's more than fair. That is a great question. If I knew the answer, I'd be a millionaire. But what I'm seeing is with my clients and a lot of people that I talk to is some people don't have the systems in place to give them the data they need. And what I mean by that is they don't have a food costing program. So it's called theoretical food costs. It's when you create let's say a burger on your menu. The theoretical food cost is basically your recipe card costed out. So you know what the burger costs, you know what the bun costs, the ketchup, the mustard, the lettuce, tomato, onion. You have all that cost. That's theoretical food costs. So many operators, and I see operators with 3 or 4 restaurants, they don't have that costed out. That's the biggest problem, is they don't have the access to real data. And then another way is another reason is comfort zone. You don't have to have a license to open a restaurant. You don't have to have a certificate. If you go to a chiropractor, they've gone to a lot of schooling. They learn it. Anybody with some money can open a restaurant. So they don't necessarily have the training or the discipline to run it like a business. It's more of a passion project. And that's the biggest struggle that I'm seeing is restaurant owners don't like to get out of their comfort zone, and they don't want to look in the mirror and say, man, maybe I'm the problem. I need help. they think next month is going to be better, next quarter is going to be better, and it's usually not.
Well, and I would, you know, you talk about so many things there just with regards to systems and processes and knowing data. Like there's so much technology out there that can help with those types of things. With, you know, whether it's kitchen design systems, whether it's display systems, whether it's food costing programs, whether it's connected to your inventory, your POS. I mean, sometimes you just literally see a piece of paper by the back door and, you know, the food gets dropped off and, you know, sign here, right? And then there's,
Yeah,
you know, it starts from that moment, right? That it's not part of an organized, structured operation. And no matter how big or small you are, there's no doubt that systems are so important. And so we, you know, in for a lot of clubs, they're about in certainly in Canada, and then also some in the United States, people are going through different times of the year. But for those that are opening the doors or those that are about to kind of get into their busy season, what are some of kind of the mistakes that, you know, operators make before they're even dealing with customers in the day-to-day, you know, like just setting up and getting their bones right, their structure right?
yeah.
What are some of those things that you would recommend people look at and really pay attention to?
Yeah, and I like what you said, getting their bones right. I look at the bones as your foundation, and it comes back to the menu. I'm actually working with a couple golf course owners now in Canada getting ready for the season. They're ahead of their competitors because they're doing the work ahead of time. What I tell, especially seasonal businesses, but especially golf course owners, look at your sales from last year. Look at your product mix if you have that. See what sold, what didn't sell, and then it's called menu engineering, where you break down your menu and you look to see what sold, you look at what that cost and your margin on that. And don't necessarily get caught up in food costs, because you can have a higher food cost, but you have better profit margin. And that's the money that you're bringing to the dollar line, is you don't feel you have to offer everything to everybody. Now, I get it. In some markets, you want to have a wider variety of menu than you do in big markets. Totally get that. But the margins have to be there, and really put the work in now. So when you're killing it in June, July, August, your menu is going to pay for itself.
Well, and that leads right into our next question, which is, you know, that kind of the vanity menu, I call it, you know, which is just that, you know, that scenario where, you know, you go into a club and you come across, and this is a generalized statement, you know, I don't want chefs to be emailing me left, right, and center, but, you know, I'll go into a club and you'll see an item. I always laugh, you know, I'll pick out an item that's got cranberries in it or something, or it's got pumpkin seeds in it, but it's it's the only thing in the entire menu, right? And so I will say to the chef, I go like, could we use something different? Because you realize that we have to order that, you know, case of cranberries once a month. We have to inventory it. We have to write a check for it. We have to process it. We have to count it, right? We have to, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think is, how do things like that kind of hurt profitability in an operation? Am I correct in identifying?
No, you nailed it. I mean, so many chefs, they're not business people. They may be great at making a dish of risotto or pasta from scratch or sous vide something. A lot of chefs aren't business people, and that's where the problems start, is they need to understand every item coming in, there's a dollar associated with that. And the more money sitting on the shelf, the less money that's sitting in your pocket. So you have to cross-utilize ingredients, and especially if that dish isn't doing volume. You know, from a business standpoint, you don't want to bring in one ingredient for one dish. It makes zero sense. And that's where the owner or general manager or director of food and beverage need to sit down with the chef, and it's a team. And it's a lot. When a chef is learning this, it's a lot. So the more eyes looking at it that are going in the same direction and have the same goal, the better it is for everybody. You know, cross-utilizing ingredients.
Do you have a, you know, so you're going into a club, you're meeting with a chef, you see an item on the menu that is a vanity item, or you see that there's a direction that chef has gone down, right? Do you have a method for communication that you use? Is it about the facts? Is it about data? What's your experience, I guess, in working with, look, creative people are incredibly, I mean, that's why, someone becomes a chef,
Yeah, without a doubt.
Food. I mean, it's not a criticism. It's
No,
like telling an artist,
it's their strength.
It's like, give me a break, right? So it's not a criticism, but how do you have that delicate conversation and that balance of that conversation?
It doesn't have to be delicate. I came up, like I said, I went to chef school in, I don't know, 83, 84, whatever. It's a different industry now. I started with passion. I love cooking. I love food. I love the restaurant business. I loved everything about it. Later in life is when I really learned the business end of it. I was lucky. My wife at the time was a forensic accountant. One of my investors was a CFO of a huge company in the States. Another friend, two other investors who were friends of mine, they were financial people. So they're like, listen, man, if we're going to back you, we want to have some understanding of developing you and moving forward as a business person. I could make my first restaurant on my own, besides the sandwich shop, street tacos. I could make an amazing 4-inch street taco. That was not the problem. The problem is making sure every penny that came in from that was accounted for and utilized properly. So to go back to the question is, how do you have that delicate conversation? And you just say, listen, man, this is the operation. We want you to succeed. We're going to help you succeed. You're the food guy or you're the food girl. That is your strength. If you don't know business, we're going to help you learn it. But everything on that menu has to pay for itself. Every item on there, whether it's an appetizer, entree, a burger, a sandwich, a wrap, or dessert, it has to pay for itself. And you have to be responsible for every dollar you spend. And we're going to help you in that learning process. It just can't be on the chef saying, hey, man, you got a great menu, but you're not making money. Okay, maybe that person doesn't know the financial end of it. I had a chef that I worked with at one of my restaurants. She was amazing. When it came to the management end, she struggled. So it's like, all right, you focus on your strength. We're gonna teach you the basics to how to understand it and look at it like a business. And it doesn't have to be awkward. It's to their advantage in the long run. I mean, since COVID, everything has gotten so much harder since COVID. And if you're a chef owner, you have to be a chef and an owner of a business. Those days of being creative and letting my art speak for itself, those restaurants don't last very long. If you're going to do it on your own, you have to know both.
Well, I think also, like in our business, a lot of the times, it's not your business, right? It's not your money. And so sometimes, there's an attitude of what am I supposed to do? How do I drive more traffic? Or if you're for profit, I mean, I always, would like to say sometimes to a chef, like, do you know how many restaurant chefs would love to have 30,000 people walking in the door? And I'd say that to anybody, like a golf club that's doing 30,000 rounds of golf has already got 30,000 footsteps walking through the door. If we can't capture enough revenue to make our food and beverage profitable, we're doing it a service. We're not doing our job. Any restaurant that has mandated traffic would love to have that problem, right? So but understanding it's a business and treating it like your own business is so critically important. And so you talked about earlier on about theoretical food cost and real food costs. And you're right. I mean, first of all, as an owner and operator, right? I mean, the first thing you want to do when a chef brings you your food and beverage team brings you the new menu, I always say, well, thank you for the new menu, but show me the food cost that, and the profit margin, like you said.
Yeah.
Food costs to be 40%, but if the profit margin is $22, I'm happy to keep taking it, whatever it is, right? So,
right.
So share a little bit more about where you think there's opportunities there. And you talked earlier on about understanding the ketchup and the condiments and the ramekin and all the other variety of different things that becomes part of a product and part of a menu. Is there some basic things that you want to go through with an operator to kind of make sure that they're really understanding the full true food cost?
Yeah, it starts with the recipe card. So with a burger, if you're buying pre-made 6-ounce or 8-ounce patties, it's 100% yield. But if you're portioning out, you have to make sure your portions are consistent. Now, in some dishes, let's say pork butt, because I'm working with a club right now, a golf course, they bring in their pork butt raw and they roast it off. They have to know their yield on that. So if you're starting with, let's say, 10 pounds and your yield is 7, you're losing, 30%. So you have to calculate that into your original recipe. A lot of people aren't doing that. And then let's say everything is costed out. You run your first month P&Ls. You think the food cost should be 26%. It's coming back at 30%. We'll talk about how you measure that in a second. But there's 4% there that is gone. And that's the number that you really need to manage. It's the delta between your theoretical and your actual food cost. And the only way to do that is you have to have a system that tracks both. So like Toast, if Toast is your POS and they have Toast Extra Chef, they have a program in there that will track your theoretical. And then at the end of the month, it tells you your actual. And that's what a chef, kitchen manager, F&B manager, that's the number they have to manage. That's where you're losing money. A lot of the time, it could be simple. It could be waste. It could be over purchasing. It could be portion control. Theft is always an issue. And we're not just talking that pork butt's walking out the back door. It's talking if you come in and you get a free plate of tacos and it's not rung in, that's theft.
Yeah,
that's the most common theft.
Yeah, and in your experience, Kevin, I put you on the spot. What do you think if you looked at all the food and beverage operations? Let's just say it's $100,000 total revenue food and beverage operation. What do you think if you took 20 of those businesses? What kind of theft do you think is happening within that environment? Because we talk about this, whether are your kitchen staff bringing in meals when they're making themselves a lunch, or is, like you said, is someone handing out a plate of nachos and not putting it through the system? Is someone, when the banquet's over, is everybody grabbing the cookies and taking them home to their kids? There's multiple different ways that food walks, right? So
for sure.
So what's your advice to an owner operator that maybe has got rose-colored glasses on?
My first advice to any operator, and it's always the same thing, it says, change your mindset. That's the biggest struggle I see is with owners. Their mindset is they don't look at it like a business and be open to be better. I have restaurant, industry standards for a full service restaurant, not a seasonal restaurant, but like a year round full service restaurant. Prime cost industry standard is 60%. So every dollar you get or every percent you get further away from that is you're leaving money on the table or you're bleeding money from somewhere. Now, I have restaurants that are doing 63%, which is amazing, especially in this environment. And I have restaurants that are doing 74%. It doesn't matter if you're doing 63 or 74. There's opportunity to be a better operator. So I try to get buy-in, and sometimes I won't bring someone on as a client because I can tell if their mindset's where it should be. It's just like I use the analogy of you're an alcoholic, but you don't want to stop drinking. Well, I can't help you. If you really want to stop and be a better operator, I can definitely help you with that. No doubt in my mind. I even guarantee it. I'll guarantee I can help you. But they have to have the mindset. It's like, I want to learn a new way, and I'm open to at least entertaining the changes I need to make. I'm not saying you have to make the changes if you work with me. I just present it and say, you can go down this road or down this road. This road is going to get you to the goal that you already stated you wanted. So let's just focus on that. Once you get that buy-in, then it's a fun relationship.
Yeah, well, I bet, because there's so many nuances, there's so many ways to tweak and to learn and to get better in food and beverage. And we hear this all the time, right? I mean, cost, we all know the cost of lettuce, the cost of meat, the cost of everything is going up at a greater rate than we can probably raise our prices. Although,
sure.
I've seen steak restaurants that seem to have no problem now charging $70 for a ribeye. So I don't know why we should be so concerned about taking a burger up $2. But when you talk about that prime cost of 60%, Kevin, can you explain to everyone a little bit more about what's included in that envelope?
Yeah. So prime cost it covers your COGS, your cost of goods sold, and it covers your labor. Those two, you want to be, in a perfect world, you're at 30% COGS, 30% labor. Labor is really high in a lot of markets around the U.S. Like I have several clients in Denver, Colorado. Their minimum wage just went over $19 for minimum wage. So when we're talking COGS, cost of goods sold, that's how much it costs to put a food item on your menu or put a cocktail in that glass at the bar. You have to know the recipe, and you have to know what it prices out at. The biggest part of, and we call it menu engineering. Go ahead.
No.
You have a question? Okay.
Well, sorry. So where's this? If the recipe card says 30 for food cost, what's the range of like acceptability of missing that? There's going to be wastage, there's going to be problems, there's going to be stuff. There's going to be
1%. Some people say 1% to 2%. Definitely not. Once you hit 3%, there's bigger problems. I like this in my restaurants. Once we hit 2% variance, that's when the serious meetings started. And it wasn't in passing. It was sitting down and sitting with the people who could actually move the needle and who had control of the restaurant. Because at one time I had 5 restaurants. I sat behind a desk all day. So I would get in there with my director of ops and we would sit with the people really doing the work. And anything over 2% or higher, it's like we got to buckle down. And we started doing the basics then. Revisiting our portion control, revisiting every plate that came back to the dish area to make sure, like we did this one experiment one night and the chef called me at the end of the night and he's like, hey, Jefe Spanish for boss. Yeah. So he was like, hey, Jefe, I found the problem. We're over portioning our French fries. It was that quick. The next day he went in early, met with our head prep cook. They weren't portioning to our standards. They were hand portioning instead of weighing it. Little things like that. How simple is that? Is putting a scale next to somebody and saying, okay, every portion is this many ounces or this many grams.
I grew up in the Earl's restaurant environment, which is a very kind of,
amazing training program.
Oh, I was very lucky, right? And Scott as well in the similar kind of family. And I mean, if there is one thing that I remember just as a young server, even when I was a 19-year-old waiter, when I would get back into the kitchen, was everything was pre-portioned. Everything, those plastic containers. I mean, for the environment, I don't know what they do now, but back then, like every single item was in its own little pre-portioned package container. And when you were making when they were making a pasta by the kitchen, they were grabbing a container, another container, and there you go. I mean, it was all about, specifics. And I do find that, when I go into a club sometimes, on Tuesday, the sandwich seems to have, 4 ounces of ham in it. And on Wednesday, it's got 12 ounces of ham in it. And while everyone loves the Wednesday sandwich because it's looks like, it's overflowing with meat, I'm thinking to myself, this can't be good for the food cost. And so, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask you, when you think, let's just say it's a 3 or 4 or 5% variance there, Kevin. And you just brought up portioning. Are there some low hanging fruits there that operators need to kind of? Is it a common kind of problem? Like you said,
without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. And even in I always felt I was a pretty good operator. Like I felt I was a really good operator, and we had recipes for everything. We had portion control in place. We had certain color scoops for certain items. And then you just happen to go in one day and all of a sudden the scoop's gone. And it's like, where's the scoop? Oh, we lost it. We got another one in the office. Oh, we used that one. We lost that one too. Things happen. But unless you're checking and doing those line checks and having those conversations, it could get away so fast. So your low-lying fruit, to go back to the question or statement, your low-lying fruit is knowing your restaurant and knowing and having systems in place and managing those systems and holding people accountable. You can have every system in the world, but if you're not holding your team accountable, it doesn't matter. And that's another struggle for some restaurant owners and managers, is holding their team accountable.
Is that when you talk about the 10% rule, I think I've got a couple questions here about the 10% rule and kind of how do operators struggle with that? Is that along that line?
No, the 10% rule is more about your menu. Okay. It's probably always been out there, but people talk about it more now. So let's just take appetizers. Any item in that category that is 10% sales or less for that category needs to be looked at. And I'm not saying you have to take it off the menu, but you need to say, hey, maybe we need to re-engineer this dish. So it goes back to your point about how restaurants can easily charge $70 for a steak, but God forbid you charge $2 more for a burger. That has to do with perceived value. In your mind, you're thinking a $70 steak, damn, this must be an amazing steak. However, I'm paying $26 for a burger. Is it really worth it? So there are some things as an operator, it's called menu engineering, is when you go in and you look at why do we need to charge $26 for this burger? Does it need everything on there? Right. Can we take this lettuce off and substitute with another lettuce where we're still going to get perceived value, but it's a little less expensive? And you do that with every item on that dish, even the burger bun.
Now, obviously, you're going to have an item that is got a 40% food cost and an item's got a 20% food cost. And, you might be selling one or more and you got profit margin. What's your kind of recommendation when you're setting pricing, right? So for those, gig members, if you haven't seen our menu engineering matrix or you haven't watched that kind of webinar that's in our platform, please do, because what Kevin's talking about with regards to menu engineering and the menu matrix, we've got an in-depth 1 hour kind of session on that. So please dig into that for those of you that are part of our platform. But Kevin, when as I said, how do you set pricing? How do you help clubs set pricing to achieve the financial bottom line that we're trying to get to? Like how do you get to that point where you do have a $28 burger and people are paying it, and as opposed to, man, our foot traffic is going down or our sales seem to be going down. Our dollar per customer is staying the same, but is this maybe a concern that's going to come back and bite us at some point?
Right.
Because because then labor's a problem, right? I mean, then it's like I don't, then I gotta. It's all put together. So what's your secret sauce for that?
Yeah, there's really no secret sauce, but where I start is, and I almost forgot this, so thank God, I'm glad I can I can jump in right now. First, you have to know how much that dish costs. Okay. Let's just say a burger. That burger cost me $4. Then you say, okay, I want a 26% food cost. You do the math. But on the other end, you have to look at it. You have to know your market. Will my market allow, let's just say, a $26 burger? If you're in a market that there's no way in hell people are going to pay $26, then you have to go back to step one and re-engineer that burger. Okay, why do we have to charge that? Well, let's break it down. Change this, change that. Now we do the math, 26% food cost. Oh, we can charge $20 a burger. Will our market bear that? Yes, we think it will. That's when it hits the menu. But then you have to keep watching that. So first you have to know your theoretical food costs. Then second, you have to know your market. If you're going to go into a small town anywhere in Canada, USA, and you're going to charge $30 a burger, it's probably not going to work. But if you go into that same small town and charge $15 a burger and you're happy with your margins, it's a win-win.
I've said this before, and whether it's correct or not, I don't know, but I do say it, and it's the conversation that I would have with the chef if we're doing some consulting. It's like, look, I'm not gonna slap your hand if your food cost is 33%, but I want you to remember that every 8 minutes, $400 walks out that first tee. So your food is intended to attract people to play our golf course, to stay afterwards, to say, I love that golf course because the greens are great, the staff are great, and they got the best burgers in the world. And then we're making money every 8 minutes, every 9 minutes when 4 men or women walk off the first tee. If your food cost is out by a couple percent, but your burger's unbelievable, and we're priced appropriately so that they're not feeling like we're I get frustrated when I go to a club and I feel like they're trying to make every penny on a can of beer. And I'm sorry, it's my pet peeve. You try to make every penny on a can of beer to charge the same amount as the restaurant downtown, when the reality is that that's going to motivate people to bring their own beer in their bag. It's going to motivate people to complain about it. It's going to motivate them to go to the pub after their round of golf because they got a happy hour draft special on for $6. And at the end of the day, you're not helping your overall business, because we're not just a standalone restaurant in the middle of downtown trying to compete with everybody else. Yeah,
and that's a great point, especially at a golf course. Every touch you have with the guest, the golfer, should lead to the next touch. So their tee times, whoever's making those tee times has to have the best service in the world. What do you guys? I haven't golfed in ages. So what are they called? The rangers, the managers,
well, they probably call them marshals, but we call them
marshals.
Ambassadors. We want to use the term ambassadors.
Okay. So those guys, they have to represent your brand, because when I come there, I want an amazing experience where I don't want to leave. I want to stay there. And if I have a bad experience on the golf course, man, I want to go somewhere else and have my whiskey and my burger. I don't want to stay there and give these guys my money. However, if I have an amazing experience and whatever I'm getting, there's perceived value there. Like if I'm getting gouged on the golf course for a can of beer, I'll go somewhere else. Or I know back in the day when I golfed, I'll just sneak my own in, like you said.
Well, we talk about marshals, Kevin, I just want to share this real quick. So we talk about marshals, and, we used to have this problem with pace of play, and the marshals were always, yelling at people to hurry up, and people were, we could tell that there was a bit of a conflict. And so we ended up giving our marshals a shot of the day coupon, a little business card that said, you just made the shot of the day. It's good for a free plate of nachos today only. Right.
Yeah.
And so the marshal, would be out in the golf course, come up to a group and they'd be like, no, we're playing up to, it's not us that's slow, don't yell at us.
Yeah.
And we wanted the ambassador to say, no, don't be silly. Mrs. Jones, I just saw you carry the creek on hole number 7. That's the shot of the day. I want you to go into the restaurant when you're done and have a plate of nachos. Of course, they'd talk about it. They'd cheer. She'd be kidding wait to come in the restaurant and say, I was the shot of the day. And then they buy some wine and, have some other food. And, so many times how many times have I ever gone to a golf shop and checked in and someone has said, can I make you guys a reservation in the restaurant for when you're done? Yeah. That should be part of every single
part of their training
experience, right? Just training. So, sorry, I got off topic there. But
going back to that, hang on, because I have a short memory. So the management, somebody in that scenario has to know how much that plate of nachos cost, because it might be their highest, their lowest profitable dish, their highest cost dish. So it's like, hey, instead of giving nachos, can we give, what about this? But that's how important theoretical food cost is. Don't give away your most expensive item.
Right, exactly. And at least make sure that when you give it away, it's rung in, and rung into the right line item. So we've got a promo account or whatever we've got. Et cetera, et
cetera. And give it away to that group of 4, not the group of 2. Because you're getting 4 drinks or hopefully 4, cocktails out of it.
Exactly. Pick the group you think is going to spend the most. When we talk about like KPIs, we talked about, you talked about 60%. When you go into a restaurant and you're talking to operators about, what are the kind of key numbers that, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? The old adage. So what are those KPIs and what are the averages, especially from a golf club standpoint, Kevin?
Without a doubt. Golf club, food truck, hot dog cart, fine dining, prime cost and PPA. So prime cost, we talked about it. It's your food and labor, or it's your COGS and labor combined. Your PPA, per person average, especially nowadays, restaurants in Canada and the US are seeing less foot traffic, less people coming into the restaurant. So what you have to pay attention to is your per person average. When you go out to eat and you sit in that chair, if your per person for your restaurant should be $60 and you have a server that's consistently in the 40s or low 50s, that's a training opportunity, okay? If you have someone they're selling $65, you take that person and you do a deep conversation about how are you getting $65? Because our average is 60. You're beating that. What are you doing? Those two right there, prime cost and per person average. And it doesn't matter what type of restaurant or food establishment you have. Everybody has a PPA. You just have to be able to track it. Most POS systems, point of sale systems, most of those can track it, but you have to make sure you're ringing everything in properly. So what I say by that is, if someone, let's say on a golf course and you're at you have a hot dog cart, 4 of us come up and we order 4 hot dogs, they have to ring in number of guests, 4. Because if you go up and you order 4 hot dogs, obviously they're probably not for you. So if you ring in 1, it's going to skew your PPA.
Yeah.
So data, it's got to be accurate.
Once again, I must walk into the places that are always the same, but I can't tell you how difficult it is just to get staff to put into the POS the number of people at a table. Like you can't calculate any of that stuff if you don't accurately put into the POS system. I'm taking table 22 and it's got 3 people at it as opposed to 4, as opposed to 2. And once again, that's a generalized critical statement. And I'm sure everyone that's listening and watching is doing this effectively and properly, but it gets back to that training issue. Like you said, if you can't
100%.
identify that Susie is selling $60 and Steven's selling $20, then we got to make some decisions.
Yeah. And it's not it's not your job's on the line. It's how can we build value within you? Like, obviously, would you rather sell $60 a person and get tipped on that? Or would you rather sell $40 a person and get tipped on that?
Right.
Servers want to make the money. So it's to
Yeah.
their advantage. Now you have to read your guests too. I'm a big believer there's so much value in a long-term guest. Like, read your guests. If someone's coming in to one of my restaurants and they want the least expensive taco on the menu and the least expensive beer, don't try to sell them a $30 shot of tequila, because it's going to make you look bad. It's going to make our restaurant look bad, and it's going to make them feel uncomfortable. At the end of the day, we're in the hospitality business. Our job is to make them feel so warm and welcome that they want to come back, or they want to talk about us, or they want to come back with a friend. That's our job. Not every time when I go out, I don't want to be wined and dined. Sometimes I just want a happy hour cocktail, have an appetizer, and move on. Don't sell me your ceviche or crudo or whatever it is. Dude, I'm not here for a dining experience. I just want to have a nice bite and go home.
Well, and it leads to one of the things that Scott and I talk about in training, right? Is that in the script, your server every single time needs to identify, hey, how you doing? How's your day? Are you guys about to go play golf? Did you just finish golf? Are you here
Right.
for your anniversary lunch? Because the answer to those three questions create a completely different dining experience and expectation, right? If you just came off the golf course, you're gonna sit around. Let's talk about dessert. Let's save room for dessert. If you're about to play in 20 minutes, guess what? Ordering the well done burger or the well done steak is a really bad idea, right? Because the kitchen's backed up. Let's get it to go. And if you're having an anniversary lunch, I'm going to sit you away from the four guys that are yelling and swearing about who cheated who on the 18th green. I mean, all those types of things. So it gets back to that training. Kevin, I want to ask you about golf clubs in particular, and about what you're seeing of the clubs you're working with and what you're learning. And also, if you've done some work with private clubs, have you done some work with private clubs?
I'm sorry?
Have you done some work with private golf clubs?
I have not. Yeah. Not private.
And that's a whole other kind of conversation, right? Because of you're once again you've got outlets that are servicing for different reasons and different priorities, and I understand that, but that doesn't mean that we have to lose our shirts. And I hear that sometimes so often in sessions where people are saying, food and beverage is an amenity, and we're not supposed to make money or break even. And sometimes it's completely accurate. Sometimes it's an excuse, to the fact that we're once again, we're not doing things properly. But what are some of the things that you feel food and beverage operations in golf clubs, kind of the mistakes that they kind of make?
They try to cater to everybody, and what I see is they're not approaching it from a business standpoint and looking at it and say, what can I serve our guests that they can only get here? Like, most of my restaurants are, what I call street restaurants. So they're not in a private facility or a venue like a sports arena. So, they're in a cool neighborhood or whatever. So put something on that menu, get out of your comfort zone, and put something on that menu that people are going to talk about. Every restaurant, a lot of restaurants I go into, everybody has a club sandwich. It's like, fine, club sandwiches, but I love a club. But what on there can I only get at your restaurant? So at your golf course, what are you going to be known for? And think of it that way. You want the people that are going to go downtown. Hey, you know what? Let's go out to this golf course. I was there last week. A buddy of mine took me golfing. I had this dish. It was amazing. I don't know anyone else that does it. It could be a pizza. It could be a burger, a wrap, a dessert, whatever. Get with your team and get creative and create something that you can only get there.
Well, and along with that, I'm sure you would also say, right, tell the story.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you've got your menu descriptive. Make sure your staff are trained to tell the story. Come up with a story if you need to. Grandma's secret recipe of chili.
Right. Whatever. Yes.
Et cetera, right?
Tell the story. Teach your staff about it. I mean, so much of this goes back to training, and it's not just training, it's in the hiring process. You have to set your standards in the hiring process. You have to put out there the expectations. If you come on board with us, here's what we're going to do to get you where you need to be. This is what we want in return. These are our expectations. You don't want to get hired from a job and you show up on day one and it's like, hey, here's your 12-page menu that you have to know. It's like, whoa, where'd this come from? Why didn't you tell me this in the interview? Yeah. Now you just wasted all that time. You waste their time by not setting expectation. Now, if you say in the interview, hey, this is what, before you take a station by yourself, you have to know this, this, and this. That's fair. And if and at that point, if they choose not to learn it, well, it was a bad hire.
Yeah. Hire slow and fire fast, no matter what department you're in. Let's talk about labor for a minute, Kevin, and in particular, I guess, efficiency in the kitchen. So when a club is struggling or a restaurant's struggling with labor, and well, let's just start with the kitchen. When they're struggling with labor in the kitchen, the right number of bodies for the right number of volume, et cetera, et cetera. What are some of the inefficiencies or areas that a manager, owner, operator should look at if they're going to go look in the kitchen and say, how do we reduce our labor costs in the kitchen?
First, you have to look at the talent that's in there. I'm a big believer in you have to cross train. I don't care if you have a hot dog stand, and you have to cross train. So what that means is, let's say in a restaurant, if you have a cold station that does your appetizers and desserts, a hot line that makes the burgers or the pasta, and then a fry station, everybody should be cross-trained. So on those slow days or slow shifts, or really, if you're trying to cover your butt, if one of the guys goes down or calls or no call, no show, someone else can jump in. It's not the end of the world. Once you have that, you're in so much better of a position. But you also have to create your menu, design your menu, so it's beneficial with less staff. If there's a lot of touches on a plate, like in fine dining, there's a lot of you look in a fine dining restaurant, and there'll be like 20 people in that restaurant. It's like, oh my gosh, because some people, all they're doing is like these 3 cold appetizers, and that's it. But they're charging for it. I get it. But you want to make everything as efficient as possible, less steps. How many touches does it take to make this burger? How many touches does it take to make this taco? That's what you have to look at when you're designing a menu.
And how many steps does it take to make an item when you're talking about designing a kitchen or you're looking at kitchen operational efficiency, right? I mean, if the bartender has to walk 6 feet between the fridge and the well and the counter, guess what? That's just, I always say, cuts and steps, right? Like the more you can reduce cutting and the more you can reduce steps, you're going to be able to create more efficiency in your restaurant. And what I also think sometimes, and my goodness, I know we're going to have listeners that are like, I wish I could find people, let alone have too many people, James. What the heck are you talking about? I can't find enough people to work in the kitchen, let alone think we're worried about having too many. But I sometimes know that we tend to schedule for when it's busiest. Sometimes busiest is like 1 hour, and the other 5 hours is like, and when you got warm bodies walking around trying to look busy, that's not efficient. As opposed to, I would rather have the staff working their butts off for 1 hour and making another 25% gratuity, and serving 9 tables instead of 6, right? As opposed to having too many staff, arguing over who gets the next table that comes in. So what are your lessons for that from a front of house labor standpoint too, Kev?
It is hard because lunch or dinner, your volume is a certain window. So if what comes back to cross training, Some restaurants stagger people in and out. That helps. Obviously, you have to look at your business, and you can't leave the staff shorthanded or the guest shorthanded.
Right.
A lot of restaurants now, they're looking at covers per labor hour, and they manage around that. Whatever your situation is, you have to put those hours, the labor hours, when they're needed. So if you have 40 hours a week to spend in labor, do we need the majority of that on, the rush period? Can we stagger people or take people off? If there's 3 servers on a Monday and we really only need 2, can we put 2 on and move that third person to another night? You really have to look at it as efficiently as possible and moving people around before you start making cuts. Now, unfortunately, with restaurants on the street that are open 12 months a year, everybody has their ebbs and flows in business. In my restaurants, we had ebbs and flows, and we set those expectations ahead of time. If we're hiring for the summer, hey, your hours may go down in the winter when we tend to slow up. Now, luckily, the last few businesses that ended up having, they were busy year round, and our dip wasn't that big, so we could spread out those labor hours. But you have to be upfront with your staff. But whoever's doing the scheduling has to be, just because you have 40 labor hours doesn't mean you have to divide it up the same every day of the week.
No, I remember, years ago, and I would still do this today if I had the opportunity. We added $5 to the green fee, included breakfast Monday to Thursday in our green fee, a continental breakfast, right?
Nice.
And it was cheaper than bringing in a cook and a server. To give people free croissants and orange juice and, fruit.
Yeah.
Because, you worry about, we're not open for breakfast. Well, how about breakfast is included, a continental breakfast, right?
Right.
And most people would still have their own or not do it, whatever. I mean, we went through way less than we thought we'd do. And we saved money because we weren't paying for people to be standing around for the odd person that wants. Now, on weekends and stuff like that, it might be different. Kevin, we only have a few minutes left, and I want to ask you about technology. I want to ask you about what is some technology that's out there. Look, people can now make pizzas in 2 minutes. There's kitchen display systems. There's POS tracking. There's data analysis. There's Toast, Lightspeed. There's all kinds of different programs and technologies out there to improve an operation. For a seasonal golf club, that is, once again, is not doing $9 million in revenue. It's doing $1 million, or it's doing 500,000 or 800,000. What's some technology that you feel anyone could benefit from that's going to have an ROI in their business?
I look at it 2 ways. You have your POS. Let's just say Toast. Okay. That's the one that comes to the top of mind. That's what I had.
Sure. Yeah.
So a system like that, or either that, or a program, a system similar to that, whatever the brand is, it needs to run a product mix. It needs to show daytime sales versus nighttime sales. They're all relatively, the main keys are relatively the same on all of them. The best investment, and it doesn't matter if you're seasonal or a 12-month restaurant, is your back of the house, your menu costing and your inventory control system. And there's a lot of different systems out there for that. I mean, there's some that are huge. They have more data than you'll ever need. Don't get drowned in the data. Don't get drowned and overwhelmed by the technology. There's some bare bones systems out there that will give you your theoretical food cost, and they're affordable. And when I say affordable, I mean, even in Canadian dollars, under $180, $150 a month, there's systems out there. Don't get overwhelmed and don't get sold on a $400, $500 a month system. I was talking to a client of mine the other day, and he didn't want to put the system in his restaurant because he felt it was too expensive. It was $300 a month for the system he has in his 4 other restaurants, but this system they're not doing volume. So I said, what are your comps? So he pulled up his comps. He was giving away $600 a month in free food and beverages. And I said, just cut that in half, and there's your money. There's most of your money.
Yeah.
It's how And it's doing something little like that most operators don't think about, which I get because they're so swamped in day to day. But man, it is to do it old school with pen and paper and Excel. Within a day, that info is outdated because your price has changed. So it's not what we call real time.
Right.
Is with these systems, I can hit a few keys on my keypad and I get my real time cost.
Right.
That is, those investments pay for themselves.
Kevin, we could keep talking, man. I'm going to have you back on soon because I didn't even get to about half of the other questions that I had, and I just loved it. You know, I love this topic. I love talking to people like you that I learn things from every single time. How can our listeners connect with you to have you help them with their business? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Oh man, follow me. I do a lot on LinkedIn. Kevin Morrison. You can go to my website, butterhospitality.com. You can follow me on Instagram, The Butter Hospitality, or you can text me or call me. I'll give my phone number if you like.
Please.
Yeah, 303-990-7817. And just start a conversation. I am not a salesperson. I am horrible at sales. I love talking this stuff. And if I can help, I'm all about it. Don't learn the hard way like I did, man.
Love it. Love it. Kevin, thank you so much for giving us your time.
James, thank you.
You bet. Ladies and gentlemen, the golf industry guru, gig listeners, I hope you got some nuggets. I know you got some nuggets because I got some nuggets. And it was wonderful to have Kevin Morrison on. As always, we'll be doing this next month, same time, same place. Otherwise, we will see you on the inside.